Hello everyone. Today's novel features Ryker, whose past is shrouded in mystery and pain from a lost love. Mary, who makes him believe in love again. Their relationship, full of challenges and contradictions, is one of literature's classic plots. His bedroom mirrored the aesthetic simplicity of a motel room. A lone cherry oak dresser stood sentinel, while an empty desk occupied the far right corner. The king-size bed dominated the space, its presence a stark contrast to the room's overall emptiness. The office, however, was a different realm entirely. It was here that Ryker's personality truly manifested. To love-seat sofas flanked a glass coffee table, creating an intimate seating area. Floor 2 ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of a meticulously maintained garden and a sweeping, curved balcony beyond. The walls, unlike the rest of the house, were adorned with several peculiar paintings. A substantial desk, complete with filing cabinets, anchored the room, while two towering bookshelves covered an entire wall, hinting at the depth of Ryker's intellectual pursuits. Seated in this sanctuary of thought, Ryker pored over the crime scene survey and evaluation, delivered by his trackers after Mary's departure for work. The detailed sketches suggested a rogue attack, with evidence pointing to no apparent ulterior motives. As a witch, Ava's history as a lone wolf for most of her life seemed to support this theory. Yet, Ryker couldn't shake the nagging intuition that there was more to this case than met the eye. A knock at the door preceded Abraham's entry. His brother's presence was a welcome interruption, a check-in to ensure Ryker wasn't drowning in the complexities of the investigation. "Anything new?" Abraham inquired, moving to examine the papers strewn across Ryker's desk. He picked up a photo of Ava's lifeless form, his eyes scanning the image with a detective's scrutiny. Ryker sighed heavily, dropping the blood forensics report onto the desk before massaging his forehead. "I've spent 3 hours reviewing every single paper, looking for some clue but nothing," he admitted, frustration evident in his voice. "I have Bruno working with the border patrols on extra shifts. If this was an attack from the outside, Gary and Ethan are examining the crime scene and tracing Ava's steps again," Abraham reported, his detail-oriented nature shining through. Ryker felt a surge of gratitude towards his brother. Abraham's ability to anticipate and address potential oversights was invaluable. There was no doubt in Ryker's mind that Abraham would make an excellent alpha, but he understood all too well the burdens and responsibilities that came with the position. He knew that Abraham would sooner abandon pack life altogether than assume the mantle of alpha leadership. It was a testament to how well Ryker understood his brother's nature. Ryker pressed his fingers to the spot between his eyes and closed them briefly, his mind reeling with a million things at once. Shutting off the images and voices in his head was almost impossible. "Am I overthinking, Abe? Was this really a rogue attack?" Ryker questioned. "You are not. A rogue attack and they only killed one person. Seems a little odd for an attack. Rogues don't just attack randomly. They would have spent days observing our schedules and activity. If they were going to attack, I would imagine more damage than killing a pack member." Those questions were questions that Ryker asked himself too. Although the evidence pointed to a rogue attack, it made little sense. Why kill one innocent when you could target more than just one? What are people saying? Many are looking answers. Ryker stood up from his seat, shoving his hand frustration. He began pacing. The throbbing in his temples increased. "How about we take a break? Come back with fresh eyes," Abraham suggested, realizing that his brother was close to losing it. Ryker growled low in frustration. Unanswered questions were bugging the hell out of him. Still pacing, he rubbed at his temples. "Did you have lunch yet?" Abraham inquired. "Food is the last thing on my mind," Abe, Ryker muttered. "But you need a break." Abraham started putting the evidence and sketches away. Ryker looked at his brother while he put things away, staring at the same thing for 3 hours whilst giving him any answers. After the brothers packed and locked away the papers, they headed for Easton's restaurant. They got there a little after noon. The restaurant was as busy as usual in the late afternoon. Ryker's eyes flickered to the door that led to the kitchen. Mary was behind that door. He could see her sweating away in the kitchen with a driven focus. Last night, Mary saw through a part of him. He felt exposed. Instead of being afraid, though, he let go. "I'm with you." Whatever was happening to him, he had no control over. Ryker was slipping fast, and it rattled him. Deep in thought, he was a little late in catching movement to his right. Easton stood at their table with their order. Usually, a Easton would greet them with a positive air. Today, however, he looked a little displeased to see them. Ryker looked up and saw that Easton was already looking at Alpha. He greeted with a quick tone, unless the plates onto the table. "Where is Mary?" Abraham asked out of curiosity. "She's in the kitchen." With that, Akan turned and walked back to the kitchen, leaving Abraham a little puzzled at Easton's reaction. Jutting a finger towards Easton's direction, Abraham spoke. "What's his problem?" Ryker didn't respond, but he had a feeling that Easton was to please with him. Obviously, Easton was showing a bit of jealousy and possessiveness that Abraham didn't catch right away. Ryker didn't appreciate the slight challenge. Indirect, but obvious regardless. Abraham and Ryker had just started eating their meal when, again, a flash of a white coat caught their attention. Both of them looked up from their plate to look at who stood next to their table. Mary had another 2 more plates. Her eyes were soft like pillow-white clouds, and her slightly parted lips curved into a warm smile. Ryker's that twisted with instantaneous need. He remembered those lips. They touched the skin of his neck, latched onto his neck, and drove him insane with dominating need. "I heard you 2 were here. Try this new dish." Easton taught me a few tricks. She placed the dishes in front of them. Suddenly, Abraham was coughing and choking on his steak. Obviously, Abraham has caught a whiff of Ryker's scent on her body because his red, tear-stained eyes quickly flew to Ryker before he grabbed his glass of water and chugged it down. "Jesus, Mary," Abraham growled. "What, Mary?" Obviously not realizing that she'd probably smelled of Ryker. "You smell." Ryker kicked Abraham under the table. He made an OF sound before he groaned in pain. "Are you all right?" "Yes, fine," Ryker interjected. He pulled Mary's plate closer for a closer examination. Mary pinched her chef's jacket between her fingers and took a sniff. "Do I smell?" "You smell like you've been in the kitchen cooking all kinds of different dishes." Abraham lied through his teeth. Ryker took a bite of Mary's dish. He could taste the subtle corn flavor mixed with bacon and subtle spices of the shrimp. Mary waited for Ryker's reaction. After his first taste, he nodded his approval. "It's delicious," he replied. Mary broke into a gorgeous smile. "I'm glad to hear that. I'm learning so much from Easton. He's an amazing chef. He's very patient and generous with me. It's kind of funny. The way he cooks differs completely from mine. But when we cook together, it's like a perfect symphony of flavors." She chuckled while shaking her head. Ryker pushed Mary's plate away. Abraham's eyes moving from Ryker to the plate before returning to his brother. Picking up his fork, he poked a shrimp and scooped up some grits before bringing it to his mouth to taste. "You should come cook for me every day." "Mary?" Abraham smirked. "But I have a feeling that Easton may not like that idea. I know him very well and he doesn't like many people. People find him intimidating, but it looks like you get along very well with him. Losing you might be hard on him." "He's very sweet," Mary replied. From Ryker's peripheral vision, he saw Easton stepping out of the kitchen before locating Mary. He headed in her direction. Something ugly was growing inside Ryker. He shifted in his seat and picked up his glass of water to chug down. Abraham watched his brother swallow his jealousy before Ryker slammed the glass onto the table rudely. Easton touched Mary's shoulder. It was a gentle touch, one that merely directed her attention back to him. "Easton, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you alone in the kitchen." Mary apologized. All is fine. The orders have stopped briefly, which was why I stepped out to check on you. Just a little too close to Mary for Ryker's liking. But Mary was an unmated female. It allowed her to be courted by more than one male. Was that reason enough for Ryker to clamp down his rising territorial urges? No. Easton's actions were evident, even if Mary didn't understand. He was asserting his courtship intentions in front of them, completely disregarding their titles or the fact that Ryker was his superior and he should be afraid. Ryker felt his control slipping when Easton placed both his hands on her shoulders and turned her to face him in his arms. Jerking up into a standing position, he surprised everyone at the table. I have some errands to run. Ryker nearly growled his displeasure. Mary grabbed onto Ryker's forearm before he could run off. You haven't finished your food, she said with a confused frown. It'll be fine. I remember XA needed me to look over the new shipments of seeds. With that quick response, Ryker left Mary behind, uncaring if Abraham followed. Once he was outside, he broke into a run, something to vent his frustration and kill the jealousy that was pitting his stomach. When he arrived at the greenhouse, Ryker felt his animalistic instinct stampering down. His mind was a little clearer. Ryker thought about Easton and Mary. The thought of the two together put an unsettling feeling in his stomach and in his chest, pulling at the vegetables and tilling to the dirt. He yanked a vegetable a little too hard when an image of Easton having his arms around Mary. Growling, he wiped his sweaty forehead with the back of his gloved hand. Ryker worked away for hours, trying to get rid of all emotions and feelings, trying to find the peace that he usually has when he worked in the greenhouse. Then Ryker heard a door squeaking open. He looked towards the entrance and to find Mary. She stood there in her chef's jacket, her hair up into a ponytail. Her eyes swept across the greenhouse until it found Ryker, kneeling in the dirt and staring at her. Ryker's eyes dipped lower to her hands. She was holding on to a basket. Hi, she said nervously. Ryker spent hours in the greenhouse trying to not think about her, but all it did was make him want her closer. Now that she was here, he was speechless and exhausted. But throughout all that, his heart throbbed at the sight of her, 25, looking through the large glass windows of the greenhouse. The morning sun rays have disappeared behind dark gray clouds. The weather increased in humidity a precursor to rain. Also, Ryker could smell the heady smell of incoming heavy rain in the air. Ryker sat on a wooden bench placed in the middle of the greenhouse on top of the narrowed, gray stone walkway. Mary moved to sit down next to him. He watched in silence as Mary pulls out a sandwich wrapped in parchment paper from her basket and handed it to him. Ryker removed his gardening gloves before he accepted the sandwich. No one had ever brought him lunch when he was brooding. Most of the time, they would leave him alone to sulk until he got over it. Ryker lifted the sandwich and took a bite. What are you doing here? He asked. I interrupted your lunch earlier today, so I worried that you would be hungry. Ryker was silent. No matter how hard he pushed, no matter how much he reasoned with himself, he would always return to the same position. His broken heart never truly mended. He never truly forgiven Lottie. He never truly forgiven himself for falling in love. That was his obstacle. But the way his heart was thumping in his chest at a maddening pace told him he was close to losing himself entirely to Mary. How could this be? His heart raced at her newness. It cracked under her smile. It is filled with hope when she tends to him with affection. Ryker looked away from her to stare at some medicinal herbs that he was growing. Why do you do this? Do what? His question confused Mary. He sighed and dropped his sandwich to the spot next to him on the bench, running his fingers through his hair. He tugged on it slightly out of frustration. Standing up, he began pacing. They lined the interior of the greenhouse with solar-powered wall lanterns. They powered on as the sky grew darker, illuminating the entire greenhouse. Mary could see that something was troubling Ryker. She sensed it since the moment he left abruptly at the restaurant. At first, she debated about coming here, but she wanted to check on him. When she arrived at the greenhouse and saw him in all his coarse and dusty glory, she saw briefly how happy he was to see her. At least, that was what she perceived. Now she wasped to shore. I like you, Ryker. Mary whispered inaudibly. Ryker's pacing halted. He looked at her. If I didn't like you, what we did last night wouldn't have happened. Ryker said nothing. Suddenly, a sound of quenching. Rapid raindrops hit the glass windows on the roof of the greenhouse. It echoed obtrusive lie. The mean kind of rain that wets everything on earth and leaves the streams running with pristine water. What are we? Ryker, she asked. I don't know. He replied. Mary tried not to flinch, but Ryker saw it anyway. Mary, he breathed in a shaky voice, reaching out to grab onto her, but stopped, swearing under his breath. He shoved his hands through her roughly. Mary, this isn't about you. Then who is it about? Ryker swallowed the growing lump in his throat and closed his eyes. His heart ached. His insides felt twisted and uncomfortable. Her name is Lottie, he blurted, before opening his eyes to look at her. Lottie. I met her when I was 17. I was rebellious back then. Mary. I ran away from Abraham and landed myself in a criminal city full of rogues. Soon after, I joined a gang of rogues. They went around the city stealing, robbing, and committing crimes. I met Lottie shortly after at the local fair. We seemed to click right away. She was my female. We had our fun, sticking with the rogues, and creating havoc. She was fun, loud, and strong. I did everything for her, but when it came down to being with me forever, she disappeared. Lottie broke me that night and I don't know if I could do this again. You still love her. Mary cowled and hid the hurt in her voice. No, Ryker said immediately. I'm broken. Mary, I don't know if I could do this. Mary understood then. He was afraid to open himself up. She took a step toward him, placing a hand on his arm. She wanted his full attention. I'm scared too, she whispered. What I feel for you, it's like a fast current. I can't stop even if I tried. Mary's hand slid up his arms to his shoulder and then to his neck. Ryker shook his head in protest. She stopped him by placing another hand on the other side of his neck. Look at me, Ryker, Mary urged. His eyes lifted to look at her. Mary stood on her tiptoes and captured his lips, smothering any protest, any worries, and running thoughts in his mind. Her hand stroked the side of his face, loving the feel of his stubble against her palm. The kiss was gentle, soft, and assuring. She didn't force but gave only what he asked for. She wanted him to know that she'll go at his pace. Mary felt his hands on her waist, pulling her closer to his body. Ryker started kissing her back while one of his hands slid around her back and into her hair. Kissing him does a little something to her heart. It sends a million butterflies through her stomach. It makes her knees weakened inside shiver with need. Ryker broke the kiss to look down at her. Mary has fallen deep. How could she not? Ryker looked like a sexy biker. Rough all around, but all soft inside. The medium, length taper fade cut only made him look more like a bad boy, especially with that stubble beard that she felt against her skin. It drove her crazy. Then there were those hazel eyes, dark and solemn but wounded, if what he said was true. She wanted to be the first to soothe the pain and replace all those broken pieces with love and care. She knew his pain all too well. Rejection hurts. The only question was, would he let her? Ryker's lips captured hers. It rid all thoughts from her mind. His kiss was one flooded with a passion that ignites a primal desire inside her. It was a silent promise of craving and pleasure. The kiss grew in urgency, and together Mary followed his lead, her tongue flickering out to play with his. Ryker growled deep in his chest. She trembled in his arms. Rain patter against the glass window. Lightning flashed and thundered across the sky. However, the noise was drowned out with the feel of their lips and their beating hearts. Ryker broke the kiss first to brush little kisses on her jawline before dipping to the curve of her neck. Mary released a breathless sound and clung onto him. Mary, what are you doing to me? He whispered huskily. She could ask him the same thing. Ryker turned her around in his arms so that her back was pressed to his front. His lips continued its descent down the curve of her neck. Mary could feel his hard length press to her bottom. "Can I?" he asked. She knew what he wanted. He was asking for permission to do more than just kissing. Unable to speak, she nodded. Instantly, she felt his hand slid into her pants and cupped her. Mary bit her bottom lip just as he stuck two fingers inside her, pumping and stretching her slowly at first. Ryker held her up with one arm, controlling and holding her so close to his large body. Her insides were a puddle. She clenched his pumping fingers. He could feel how close she was to the edge. Her whimpers turned breathless and quick. Removing his fingers, he turned her around to capture her lips again, moving to remove her hair to allow her hair to drop down to her shoulders. Then he unbuttoned her chef's jacket at the top before pulling down her tank top. He didn't even bother removing everything. He only peeled what he needed to gain access to her breasts. Once he freed her breasts, he fell back onto the bench before dragging her between his legs, his mouth latching on to one breast. Her hands ran through his hair, holding him close to her breast. He slid the tip of his tongue around her nipple before flicking it. It was the last straw for Mary. He teased her enough. Her hands tugged at his hair hard. The next second he had her twisted around again. She tried to look back, but Ryker wouldn't allow it. She heard unzipping before he pulled down her pants halfway and down into his lap. He stopped so when the tip of him touched her entrance. It was only a second though. The next second, he pulled her down onto his lap completely. It was the best feeling ever, hitting her in places she couldn't even dream of. He wrapped one arm around her front and pulled her back to rest on his chest. Slowly, he pulled out and in. It was like he was taking his time. He wanted to savor every movement, every sensation, and moan from her. Mary could hear his hard breathing. So, he might be acting like he was in control, but she could feel how much he was liking this. The way his arm was tight around her upper body and the way he breathed unevenly made Mary feel desired and cared for. Her heart ached. "Ryker, wait, please." His arm that held her upper body tightened as he increased his pace, pummeling into her so quick and deep. She never wanted him to stop. "Fuck, Mary," he growled, standing up. He held her close and swapped their position. She was bent over with her hands on the seat. He stood from behind and took her hard that her body shook. It also drove Mary closer to the edge. Her back arched and she tried to wiggle away because it was all coming too fast and she wasn't prepared for the incoming orgasm, but Ryker's grip on her hips was firm. He pulled out and slammed back into the hilt. She cried out his name as she fell over the edge. Her body shook so hard. All the while, Ryker didn't stop his pace. He made sure she received the best orgasm she ever had. Then he pulled out and spilled his seed onto her backside. When he was done, he wiped her down as much as he can with the napkin she brought. I finished getting dressed. It was still raining hard outside. Mary fixed the last of her buttons before looking at the crew who was already looking at her. When she did look at him, though, he placed a hand at the back of her nape and pulled her in for a hard kiss. Her heart skipped several beats and her stomach performed jumps. There was no use in fighting their attraction. Ryker wanted her. He just needed to find the right time to tell her this. Because through all this, one thing was for sure clear for him. He couldn't let Mary go. She was going to be his one way or another. 26. The couple of days passed since Ryker and her little rendezvous in the greenhouse. Every time Mary thought about what happened, she would blush in silence. To be honest, it was a little she never thought she would be in that kind of intimate situation. Thinking back to how he touched her and made her come alive, she never felt such a rush of self-confidence and love. It shook and frightened her all at once. For the 100th time since the start of Mary's first day off from the restaurant, she blushed again. She was scrubbing the floors with some old rags and a bucket filled with floor cleaner, but her mind was completely elsewhere. So scrubbing, careless movement with a weird smile on her face. She sat on the hardwood floors of her kitchen with a little dazed look. It took a while before Mary heard the knocking on her front door. They were loud and impatient. Quickly, she dropped what she was doing and stood up to open the door. Alexei stood on the other side with all kinds of goods. She saw some home-baked bread, a jar of pickles, and a carton of eggs. The early morning sunlight shined on Alexei's horrid, scarred face. The scowl he wore on his face was intimidating and filled with irritation. He wore a worn white shirt that had old grease stains all over it and stained denim blue jeans. The ripped jeans didn't look like he did it on purpose because of the style, but because he had worked on his knees in the fields long enough for it to rip. Alexei shook his head and his black hair slightly fell over his right face to cover some of his scar. For a minute, there was an awkward silence between them. Barry was a little shocked to see him here. Alexei said nothing. Instead, the rude male pushed the basket right into her arms, afraid that the goods would fall on the small stepped porch. She grabbed onto it instantly. "Good morning," she finally said. "Ma asked me to drop these off for you," he muttered. Barry looked down at the basket once again. The bread had a golden brown crust to it. The pickles in the jars looked deliciously pickled, and she knows for a fact that the eggs in the carton was from their chickens on the farm. This was really sweet of them. She didn't have to ma owe Saint like to owe favors. Mary Keldon stopped the frown from appearing on her face. "I wasn't asking for anything in return." Mary could feel her frustration rising. "It doesn't matter. She asked me to bring this to you." Alexei brushed her response off like nothing. "Well, wait here a minute. I baked some cookies earlier. How about I pack some for you to bring back to share?" Mary halfway turned but stopped when Alexei refused. "We're fine," he said gruffly. "I said wait." Mary nearly growled her reply. Alexei stopped retreating, his eyes trained on her. Barry didn't mean to snap angrily. She just didn't like how Alexei was treating her. "Come inside," she ordered, without looking behind. She walked inside with the basket still in her hands, placing the basket onto the small kitchen counter. She started packing the cookies she baked this morning into a Ziploc bag. Surprisingly, Alexei followed her inside, standing in the middle of her cabin with his hands pocket. With his towering figure, he looked like a giant enclosed in a small space. Even her furniture looked small to his size. "I'm sorry if I came off rude," Alexei said, breaking the silence between them. Mary looked at him. She knew he meant no harm. Alexei uses harsh words to stop people from looking at him for too long. She zipped the bag up before walking and handing him the bag of cookies. "It's fine," she replied. "I'm sorry that I snapped." "Yeah, you did. You surprised me." She broke into a smile before chuckling softly. "Just know that I appreciate everything you and your family have given me, and when I give you guys things, it is not to make you guys feel uncomfortable. I just wanted to thank your family and you." Alexei said nothing, but nodded his head in understanding. She hoped that this minor exchange in conversation would change how Alexei interacts with her. After he left, Mary continued to clean her little home. It was late into the afternoon when she finished, and her stomach was grumbling in protest. She made herself a quick sandwich before settling down outside on her porch step and calling her brother on a satellite phone that was given to her on her first day here. Marcus answered right away. "How is everything there?" Marcus asked. "It's going great. I found a job here and am learning so much." Marcus. "The things that Ryker has done for the pack here. It's genius." Marcus. "Yes, amazing. Sweet. And kind Ryker." Marcus interrupted. Mary realized she had slipped the intimate name calling. "Alpha Ryker. I meant," she corrected. "It sounds like Alpha Ryker has been paying special attention to you." Mary could sense Marcus's overprotective brother's mode even through the phone. "Marcus, I'm doing great here, so I'm guessing you won't be coming home soon." Mary looked at the tall, vast trees before her and felt a sense of belonging. It seemed so quick, but she felt more at home here than she had ever been. The weather and elevation took a while to adjust, but aside from that, she loved everything about living here. "Mary." Marcus called for her attention again. "I don't know it," she replied. She could hear Marcus' huff of frustration. "This is for me." "Marcus." Barry reminded him again. I'm a big girl now. I should get to decide my future. I know, Mary. But the kids, they miss you and Donnie. She's pregnant. And just worried about you. He sighed. He'll come back to visit. Mary replied. They can't travel to see her. With Donnie being pregnant, it was important that they stayed safe within the pack. She could understand Marcus's struggle right now. His mate's pregnancy, and now he had to worry about her too. Were you really going to stay there? He said it like a question, but they both knew it was a statement. They said nothing for a bit before Marcus spoke up again. I miss those days when you needed me. When I had to protect you from everyone, and when you looked at me like I was your hero. It was easier for me to take care of you. I still need you, Marcus. Not the same way. He was sad. She didn't respond because she was fighting back tears, swallowing the lump in her throat, trying to control the vibration in her throat so that when she speaks, the words don't come out shook and filled with tears. I'm proud of you, though. Mary, it's always been us, and I've gotten used to taking care of you. But to see you grow into an amazing female, it's because I have you. Damn. Her voice shook. Marcus's neck was shaky too. I have to go. Donnie is up from her nap and the boys want food. If anything happens, you'll let me know. You'll call me, Marcus asked. Even if she tried fighting back her tears, they slipped down her cheeks like a waterfall. With her vision blurred, she took in a shaky breath and bit her lips. She missed her family so much. Hearing Marcus's voice made it harder for her because they had never been this far apart. Yes, always, she whispered. After her phone call with Marcus, she took a stroll in the woods, hoping that the walk would soothe away the tears and clear her mind. Mary truly missed her family. Thinking back to all the times that spent together and her sudden decision to leave, her heart cowed and stopped the terrible throb. It was almost unbearable. The sun was almost setting over the horizon and Mary was still wandering around with no actual destination in mind. Her straying mind came to a halt when she stopped in front of the pack house. She only came here once on her tour, and it was still far from her home. When she realized where she was, she turned halfway to return home but stopped when she heard movement in front of her. Whoever it was too far for her to identify them. They were also wearing masks and dark clothing. Without thinking, Mary moved closer to see what they were doing. The smell of gasoline filled her nostril, and she knew what was going on. Hey, she shouted. 3 bodies turned to look behind them. Panic whispers before matches were lit. Immediately, they tossed the matches onto the gas and the wood-built building immediately lit on fire. It burned quickly with the gasoline. The terrifying fire smoldered the entire backside of the building. Pack members were inside. The 3 unidentified individuals ran and disappeared into the woods. Mary had no time to think. She screamed, the only thing echoing in her mind. Fire. She repeated the word constantly while running towards the building. In seconds, the building was burning furiously. Lights turned on in the pack house. People were running and out from all kinds of directions, trying to kill the fire before it could burn everything to the ground with water. Mary could hear people screaming and crying for their loved ones. The more able pack members ran inside the building to rescue as much people as they can. Mary noticed a little female pup, who looked only 6 years old, crying outside, standing in front of the burning building. Mommy. She sobbed and attempted to run back inside herself to save her mom. Mary grabbed onto her shoulders. Stay here. It's too dangerous for you to go inside, she urged the pup. My mommy is inside. She wanted to go find my dad. She ran back inside. Mary turned to look at the building. It was bright as the sun, with its bright orange and fiery red hues. Everyone seemed busy trying to do something. The little pup struggled in Mary's arms, wanting to run back inside to save her mom. Mary took hold of her shoulders and turned her to look at Mary. They'll go inside to find her. Do you know what floor she is on? What does your mommy look like? Mary asked. We live on the 2nd floor. My daddy says she looks like me. The little pup looked hysterically through her tears. It reminded Mary so much of her. Losing both her parents hurt Mary more than anything. They'll go inside to find her, but you have to promise me you'll stay out here and wait for me, Mary said. But you don't know where they are. I don't know you. The little pup argued with tears still running down her cheeks. You're right. What is your name? Mary asked. Tegan. She hiccuped. Mary smoothed back her hair. Tegan, you told me your mommy looks like you. You'll find someone with beautiful golden brown hair and ask her if she has a little pup named Tegan. That way it'll for sure get your mommy out. The little pup seemed to be happy with that response. She nodded through her tears. When Mary realized the little girl will not chase after her, she released the little pup and headed inside the burning building. By now, the fire has covered the entire backside of the building and burning its way to the front. Many people have made it out alive, and were working actively in putting out the fire. She entered the burning building, walked inside the main foyer and towards the stairs leading up to the second floor. All the while, she was inhaling smoke and coughing. She ripped the ends of her shirt to cover her mouth and nose. Mary knew she didn't have much time. The building was going to fall. She needed to move quick or else she'll burn inside this building along with everything else. Ryker, Abraham, and Gary appeared at the chaotic scene just to see Mary stepping out of the fire right before the structure collapsed. In her arms, she was holding another female pack member. With no hesitation, Ryker rushed over to her side. She was shaking a little from exhaustion. He grabbed onto her shoulders right after she released the female to medical staff. Ryker's eyes did a quick sweep. Black streaks riddled her face and her hair looked a mess. She looked exhausted. Are you okay? He asked in concern while his hands roamed over her body. I'm okay, she said, but the pained grimace on her face when he touched her left forearm didn't go unnoticed. He lifted her left arm and turned it slightly to see that the scalding fire burned her forearm. Get someone over here to look at this now, Ryker ordered Gary. The building was no longer standing, and with it the fire was dissipating. Ryker watched Gary leave. His eyes swept over the place. Many people made it out alive, but the fire injured some pack members during their escape. He felt Mary lean further into him. His eyes returned to her just in time to catch her as she collapsed unconsciously into his arms. He knelt onto the ground to stop her fall. She's a fool, Abraham whispered next to him, but Ryker could hear the concern in his voice. Ryker cradled one side of her face and held her close to his chest. At the same time, he was trying to control the erratic beating of his heart. When he heard that there was a fire, he was afraid for his people. But when he appeared at the scene and saw Mary coming out of the fire, he never felt so much fear in his life. She's brave, Ryker whispered proudly. She went into a raging fire to save people she didn't know. It wasn't an accusation. There was surprise in Abraham's voice. Ryker, on the other hand, wasn't surprised at all. This sounds very much like Mary. It made him proud, but it also scared the crap out of him. Mary had no fears. She charged right inside to rescue people without a single thought about her life or how much her life matters to the surrounding people, to him. The medical staff appeared and knelt next to Ryker, setting down his medical kit. He took hold of Mary's hand and turned it around to look. It was a severe burn. It scalded the entire backside of her forearm. It would leave a terrible scar. The medical staff murmured before opening his kit up. He pulled out a medicinal jar. In a hospital setting, it would be more convenient to debride the bad skin tissue before applying medicinal herbs to increase the healing process. Ryker understood. There were many other people that needed attending to, many of which who received more severe burns compared to Mary. This will relieve the pain and increase the healing process, the medical staff assured him. What is it? Ryker questioned. No worries, Alpha. It's a herbal mixture that I learned a while back during my residency. It has gotu kola in it to help with skin repairing and aloe vera to help with the burn. Mary didn't wake up. She slept through the dressing of her forearm too. When the medical staff finished tending to Mary, he packed away his medical supplies before separating from them to tend to others. Ryker was in a dilemma. The leader in him felt the need to stay and manage things here, but the male inside of him wanted to tend to the female in his arms. looking away from Mary's unconscious form. His eyes did a quick sweep of the surrounding chaos. People were distraught, and soon they would start asking questions. Questions that he didn't have any answers for. "Carry her to my house, Abe." Ryker looked at his brother. Abraham nodded before taking Mary from Ryker's arms. He watched Abraham carried her away before turning his attention to the scene. Bruno and Gary appeared in front of him, each wearing a grim look on their face. Ryker noticed Gary was carrying something. When his eyes landed on the red-tinted gasoline containers. "I found several of these at the edge of the woods," Gary stated. There were also footprints, if I could guess it correctly, to 3 people. 2 lighter in build and 1 who was heavier. One set of footprints has a heavier set of prints on the ground. They fled. Ryker murmured more to himself, which means that they didn't have time to cover their tracks. Someone caught them. It must be those damn juveniles. They are always causing trouble. They must have. Bruno stopped when he saw Ryker shake his head in disagreement. "No, it's not them. They are rule breakers, but they won't go this far," Ryker argued. "It has to be them. Those pesky little brats don't care about the pack. They just want to have fun," Bruno combated. "We shouldn't allow them to act this way." Ryker had recently taken in a group of rebellious juveniles. They were rule breakers and acted tough around everybody. But those were simple disobedience. They wouldn't dare go as far as harming others. And Ryker knew that thoroughly. Ryker agreed with Bruno. They shouldn't act this way. But Ryker could see himself in the group of juveniles. They were lost and so afraid of acceptance. Their only shield of protection was to pretend that this new life meant nothing to them, when they truthfully sought something more than fear and sorrow. People who migrated to his pack always sought more. Alpha Ryker. Ryker turned to see Clarence. Clarence was an elder pack member that lived in the pack house. He had no children or mate. Mainly spends most of his time minding his own business. However, Ryker valued his opinions very much. Clarence was once a council member from another pack until he moved away. "May I have a moment of your time?" Clarence looked at Bruno and then at Gary. Ryker dismissed them before turning to look at Clarence. A few members have S-linked forward. They all looked tired and worn from trying to put out the fire. "Do you know what happened?" Clarence was the first one to ask. Ryker shook his head. "I wish I had the answers for you all, but I don't right now." Some of them nodded in understanding. "I apologize greatly. I wished I could give you all answers, but there isn't. I have failed in protecting you. You do not need to explain yourself, Alpha. We know you do everything you can to provide for us." Clarence interrupted with a wave of his hand. "Many people were injured, feeling the guilt of not being able to save them all. Yes, people were injured, but our lives are not in your hands. Alpha, life happens. Death happens. Our lives are our own to save, and you have saved us. We can never thank you enough. Do not think too hard on this." The few people that had wandered over nodded in agreement, but Ryker knew that even if some believed so, others wouldn't. "Is the female okay?" someone asked, changing the subject entirely. It took Ryker a minute to understand that they were asking about Mary. "We saw her rush first into the fire and helped pull someone out. Then she ran back in to save another. The female amazed me. She didn't stop until she knew everybody was out. She didn't even know us. And she went running in to save my little girl." Although everyone was complimenting her and feeling grateful towards her, Ryker still felt that she shouldn't have done it. She risked her life without considering the consequences. She could have died. "She's all right and resting now," Ryker assured them. It was late when he finally got to go home. He made his way up the steps and towards his bedroom, exhausted from homing his pack members into a community center until he could find them a new home. He stunk of smoke and sweat. Opening the door, he had totally forgotten about Mary until he found her sleeping on his bed. He had asked Abraham to bring her to his home because he felt it would be safer to her closer to him. He also had a spare bedroom. Walking over slowly, as to not wake her, he looked down at her sleeping form. Her bandaged hand was lying on top of the blanket and over her stomach. She looked like she took a shower because she was now wearing one of shirt and she no longer had black streaks all over her face. After a minute, he showered and hurried to bed. The sun was going to rise any minute now, and he hadn't had a single wink of sleep. Ryker crawled into bed soon after, wearing only a pair of sleeping pants, nothing underneath. Just as he was about to settle in, Mary began mumbling. She became more aggressive and moving her legs and arms as if something terrified her. She twisted toward him as if to curl up into a ball. He saw her bandaged arm about to get squished between the mattress and her body and immediately grabbed onto her shoulder to stop her from rolling over. Carefully, he pushed her back onto her back and scooted closer to her body, making sure his arm rested over her body to stop her from rolling onto her injured arm. She was still moving a little, but her movement lessened, and her whimpers quieted down. Mary May had run into the fire, but it must have traumatized her. She was Ray, living it in her dreams. He saw the worry lines etched on her face. Gingerly, he leaned forward and kissed her forehead and smoothed back her hair. Laying back down, he looked at her for another minute before closing his eyes and falling asleep next to her. He could have slept in the spare bedroom, but the temptation here was too great. She was in his home and being near her relieved some of his fears and worries. It seemed like he had just closed his eyes because when he opened them next, it was already morning and he was sleeping alone. The pillow next to him was imprinted with her body and the bed sheets next to him was ruffled. Mary slept in his bed. Ryker didn't bother getting dressed. He brushed his teeth and washed his face before walking out of his bedroom and downstairs. His house was quiet with no sound, so disappointment began to settle in his chest. He had hoped to see her before she left, to see if she was doing better. Then Ryker heard soft footsteps in the kitchen and gentle murmuring. Mary was in his kitchen cooking. He turned and walked down the hallway and into the curved archway that led to the kitchen. She was still in his shirt, but he wasn't sure if she wore anything underneath his shirt. "Good morning," he announced his presence. Mary dropped the spatula in her hand when she heard his name. "Oh," she said. He sauntered around the small marble island to stand in front of her. Mary's eyes traveled slowly down his without-clothes chest and then flew back to his face. A blush marred her cheeks. Ryker cowled in help, but admit he liked this vision in front of him. Mary was in his kitchen. She reached for the spatula and his attention was caught by his bandaged arm. "How is your arm?" He reached to take hold of her hand to bring her arm between them. "I checked it this morning. It still looks pretty ugly," she said. They had moved closer to examine her arm. It was like a magnetic was pulling them together without them even trying. "You shouldn't have gone inside." He looked at her with displeasure. But why?" She stuttered in disbelief. She was trying to save his pack members and he could have been grateful. "You could have gotten hurt," he responded, still scowling. "I didn't though." Mary argued and yanked her hand from his. She took a step away and continued to cook breakfast, turning her back to him. "Mary," he sighed before shoving a hand through his morning. Unkempt hair. "It's not that I am not grateful. I'm thankful you were there to save them. If it were me, I would have done the same, but I don't want you to get hurt." "But I didn't," she said again. "And this is my choice. You have no say in this." He gave a short laugh before moving to stand next to her. He leaned against the counter. "I think that I have some sort of say in this because I promised your brother I would take care of you." Mary turned to glare at him with her spatula still in her hand. She was making some scrambled eggs. "Before you get angry with me, I only say this because I care about you. I truly do not like seeing you getting hurt. So, the next time you decide to rush into a raging fire, think about me too." Mary didn't know how to argue with that. It was his feelings that he was expressing. He had a right to feel that way. The way he said it, however, made Mary feel special. 28. It was mid-afternoon when Ryker headed to the community center to check on his pack members. Mary had left after breakfast to go home to change into her clothes. Ryker said nothing to her because his mind was back to what happened last night. Abraham met him at his house shortly after Mary left and left together to the community center. The building was formerly used for educating the little pups, but when the new high school building was built, They moved everyone into that one building. It had enough separate sections to teach everyone. Now, the building was used to host events and to hold meetings. However, they have cleared the space for everyone. Abraham and Ryker entered through the double glass doors. Inside the main lobby, there were two hallways. The left one had the small meeting rooms, formerly known as classrooms, and the one on the right had the big gym space. The relief team had set up many cots for those who had lost their home. A few pack members loitered around the main lobby chatting quietly amongst themselves, but loud talkative noises were coming from the gym. They followed the right hallway to the open, big double gym doors. Inside, many pack members sat around conversing on their cots. The medical staff was making their rounds on everyone. Gary was in the middle of interviewing a few pack members with a small notepad, but when he saw Ryker and Abraham, he excused himself from them and walked over to report. "Got anything new for us, Gary?" Abraham asked first. Well, many of them were having dinner or just doing their daily routine. They reported nothing out of the ordinary except for one individual who stated that they saw Mary standing in the back of the pack house where the fire originally started. Ryker scowled at Gary. They didn't think it was her, did they? Mary would never do this, or was Ryker so bad at judging character that he didn't see it coming? It wouldn't be the first time too. He thought he knew a female in the past and she turned and backstabbed him. But Mary, could it be? Loud laughter coming from the lunch line pulled all three males' attention in that direction. It was Mary. She was working the lunch line, ladling soup into bowls and handing them to the pack members. Right away, Ryker pushed his previous thought aside. Mary wouldn't have hurt his pack members. She had shown kindness repeatedly. "It's not her," Ryker said. Abraham and Gary agreed right away with Ryker's analysis because both of them nodded their head in. All three males had been around Mary enough to know it was her who started the fire. However, she was there at the crime scene. In fact, they saw her running out of the pack house with a pack member wrapped in her arms. The pack house was far from her cabin. A few hours of walk time if she was walking at an easterly pace. Ryker cowled and figured out why she was heading towards the pack house. Was she going to meet someone there? She might have been there by coincidence. Everybody knows Easton has expressed an interest in her. Abraham said it so casually that Ryker knew he didn't say it to jab at him purposely, but more so as a point. Ryker hated that idea even more. Speak of the devil. Gary chuckled. Easton was standing right next to Mary. Together, the two looked like the perfect couple with bright smiles on their face and working to feed the pack members. They wore matching colored shirts. Ryker headed in their direction with Abraham and Gary scrambling to follow. Slowly, the sizable crowd of pack members widened enough for Ryker and them to walk through. Mary finished handing over one soup bowl over to a pack member before she noticed everyone was looking behind them. She also looked in that direction to find Ryker standing in the middle of the crowd. Alpha Ryker. What a surprise to see you here. Mary split the eerie silence of exchanged looks between everyone. It shouldn't be a surprise at all. He is the Alpha. Abraham smirked. Pack members who were nosy enough to listen to the conversation nodded their heads in agreement. Mary cleared her throat before trying to busy herself with picking up another soup bowl. Of course. Are you hungry, Alpha? Easton inquired while doing the most audacious thing. He reached over and took hold of Mary's hand that was holding onto the ladle. Together, they scooped the soup into the bowl in her hand. Every honest attention fell on their connected hands. Ryker could hear the pack members whispering and gossiping East and courting Mary. Ryker didn't realize what he was doing. He growled possessive lie low. No one should have heard it. But every werewolf within the building turned their Alpha because everyone had supernatural hearing. Mary is involved with the Alpha. Was the Alpha marking his territory? Ryker heard every single question that came out of his pack members' mouths. Ryker shoved his fingers through his hair angrily. Curse it all. Now everyone was really going to gossip, Ryker thought. Ryker turned to Gary. You go replace Mary, he ordered. What? Gary looked surprised. Then he turned to look at Easton and Mary before looking back at Ryker again. He repeated the question, just in case he heard it incorrectly. But one dark look from Ryker was enough to send him dropping his notepad's hands and running toward Mary. Gary squeezed himself between Easton and Mary with an apologetic smile. "Here, let me help you." Gary put his hand over Easton's. Immediately, Mary pulled her hand away and stepped out of her spot that Gary had forcibly taken over. Mary began. "Mary," Ryker called out. She looked at Ryker before turning to look at a scowling Easton. Gary still held on to Easton's hand before Easton also yanked it away. Gary chuckled before turning to assist the pack members. Mary sauntered around the table to Ryker. When she was in close enough range, he took hold of her elbow and pulled her closer to him. Abraham shrugged his shoulders when Mary looked at him quizzically before turning to look at Ryker again. "Why are you angry?" She leaned forward to whisper in his ear so that no one heard them. Ryker felt a terrible ache in his chest and a twist in his guts at the sight of Easton and Mary together. It was ugly and a horrid feeling, yet he couldn't stop it from crawling all over his skin and causing his wolf to get antsy. With one hand still wrapped around her arm, he grabbed the back of her neck and pulled her forward. She landed with a thunk onto his chest before his lips crushed her lips a second later. Mary stiffened completely in Ryker's arms. He shouldn't kiss her like this. Not in front of everybody. What would everybody think? Ryker didn't give a fuck what everyone thought. He only knew that he needed to make a point, and the point was that Mary was his. Nobody else's but his only. This was unseen before. Ryker's pack has always wondered when he would settle down. When would he finally possess a female and choose her as his? Now he had marked his territory with a possessive growl and kissed her in front of everyone, pronouncing it official that she was his. Mary's hands clutched at his cotton tee, shirt hard before pushing him away from her. Her swollen lips and eyes were wide with all kinds of mixed emotions. How could you? Ousted and growled. "She's mine." Ryker snarled. Ryker challenged Easton to say otherwise. In seconds, Easton was standing in front of Ryker, the two males glaring at each other. Mary had to squeeze herself between the two males. This was not the time and place for them to do this. Everyone was staring with wide, open mouths gasping for air. It was ridiculous. Although Mary was embarrassed to be the center of attention, she felt another emotion. One that also stated she didn't mind very much that Ryker kissed her openly. She liked it. In fact, Mary placed her hands onto Easton's chest to push him away while her back was against Ryker's chest. Ryker noticed her hands were touching Easton and immediately grabbed her wrist to pull her away. Easton grabbed the other wrist to stop her. "Mary, you have a say in this," Easton argued. "You don't have to do anything that you don't want to." Ryker yanked Mary behind him and grabbed onto Easton's wrist to remove his hand off of Mary. Easton looked about ready to challenge Ryker, but Mary immediately let out a shriek and pushed Ryker away. "Stop. I mean it," she screamed before turning to look at Easton. "Please." As a low level which Easton's jaw worked back and forth. Mary could see that he was angry and debating if he should push further. Fine. It's okay." After a minute of contemplating, Easton nodded his head in reluctance before turning his back to them. Ryker didn't waste a second. He pulled Mary out of the gym and building, leaving behind his brother. Mary skipped to follow him. She could see how angry Ryker was. His shoulders were taut through the thin cotton material of his shirt. The muscles were straining as if he was going to shift. Neither one of them exchanged words until they were miles away. She waited until he was no longer angry. The grip on her wrist lessened and the stiffness in shoulders disappeared. But at that point, they were well immersed in the woods of the mountain and away from the town. His footsteps slowed to allow her to walk next to him. "Why did you do it?" She was the first one to ask, but he ignored her question. Instead, he asked her another question of his own. "What were you doing at the pack house last night?" He wasn't ready to answer her question, which was fine for now. She turned to look at the desired path in front of them with a sigh. "I called Marcus. I missed my family. I just wanted some fresh air and ended up walking too far," she admitted. Ryker forgot about Marcus. Her brother. It's been crazy since arriving back home. He stopped his footsteps and turned her to face him with hands on both her shoulders. I'm sorry. I've been so busy. I haven't thought about how you were feeling since leaving your family. Mary didn't want to cry in front of Ryker, so she sighed shakily and shrugged her shoulders. I'm all right, but that was the reason I was at the pack house. Then another image of the 3 dark figures appeared in Mary's mind. She gasped loudly, which startled Ryker for a second. What's wrong? Last night, when I noticed I was at the pack house, I was about to turn around and go back home, but I noticed movement behind the house. I turned to look, and I saw 3 black figures pouring gas onto the building. I shouted after them, but it was too late. They lit a match and threw it onto the building. The fire grew so quickly. I should have told you this, but I was so lost in everything. I totally forgot. It made sense. Ryker didn't care if she did or didn't. She saw the figures. That means someone did this on purpose. It was someone that could get close enough to the pack house. It was someone inside the pack. Not just someone. That's several people. Fuck. Ryker growled and shoved his hands through his hair. He walked away for a second before whipping around to look at Mary. Could you make out their face? Ryker questioned. Mary thought hard, digging into her memories to see if she could find anything significant that she could tell Ryker. It was so dark, but if she looked at someone's back, she may be able to identify the individual that threw the match that night. I couldn't see their face, but I saw the back of the person who threw the lit match onto the pack house. I shouted, and it scared him. He jumped and turned to look in my direction. I couldn't make out his face because I got distracted by the fire. This was good enough for Ryker, but it also means that the person who Mary had also seen her too. 29 Ryker didn't take that information into well. It was the idea that Mary's life could be in danger that changed everything. It propelled him to bring her back to his home. She was safer with him than anywhere else at this point. Now, standing in the small foyer of Ryker's home, Mary looked ready to argue with his one-sided decision. However, the look on his face halted all the words she had prepared on the way here. Is this really necessary? She asked. I promised your family I would keep you safe. Mary doesn't know why, but when he said that, it made her upset. We aren't even sure if the person I saw knows that I saw him. Besides, I don't want to be an obligation to you. If it's the promise about my brother that is bothering you, I can dissolve you of that issue. I am a grown female and can handle my own decisions and choices. Ryker released a frustrated growl before taking hold of Mary's hands that she was wringing together subconsciously in front of her. He pulled her closer to him, taking both her hands into his. He bent his head a little to look into her eyes. You know that's not what I meant. You should already have guessed the direction of my feelings towards you. Mary. Being here has changed Mary's life dramatically. In her pack, she had been almost invisible to the opposite sex for years, but living here she has learned to become more independent and confident in her features and skills. The feeling was inexplainable, but Mary knew that she had changed for the better. Ryker had told her how much he desired her that night she drunk a little too much tonic. Then he asked to court her and took her out on a date. He had kissed and made love to her in ways no one has ever done before. Mary bit her bottom lip, and heat crawled up her neck and warmed her cheeks. Her gaze dropped to where his hands were holding her securely. With Ryker, she felt stronger, confident, and desired. That she wondered if what she had guessed was truly what he was thinking. Ryker said he got hurt in the past. He may still don't trust her. I may have guessed, but I haven't heard. He stopped her sentence by yanking her into the hard planes of his chest, placing a firm, possessive hand on the back of her neck. He brought their lips together. A gentle kiss. The tug here and there to urge her to let go of her resistance. When she responded by kissing him back, they fell into a seamless sync. For such a rough alpha male, Ryker was always tender towards Mary. Maybe that was the reason her heart refused to maintain a steady heartbeat when he was around her. His lips were soft and pillow-white. His cardamom and clove scent had become a second scent to Mary. She would bask in it for days if she could. How addicted has she become to him was beyond her. When Ryker broke the kiss, he cradled her face. He took his time looking over her features and remembered faintly the first night she had kissed him. There was no point in denying what he feels. This female before him had him utterly trapped within her firm grasps. He had already proclaimed his rights to her in front of his pack already. "You are mine," he professed to her. "From the moment you kissed me at the mating ball to the moment you left with me that night I was leading your pack. No one else was going to have you." Ryker smoothed her head at her back, exposing her neck. What do you mean?" Mary stuttered. He was looking at her with so much passion and tenderness. Her insides were melting. Her knees wobbled so much in his presence. She had to lean towards him a little to hold herself up. Her heart felt like it was lodged in her throat. Ryker smirked as if he knew the affects he has on her. "Are you willing to be my mate? My Luna?" Luna, Mary must be dreaming. Ryker was asking her to be his mate. She felt the room spin, and she swayed slightly on her feet. Dear Lord, he was asking her to be his mate. Her vision clouded with black dots. "Mary." Ryker looked worried. She opened her mouth to say something, but then fainted right into his arms. Luckily, he was quick on his feet, caught her just before she hit the floor. He carried her to his bedroom and laid her in his bed. She didn't answer him, yet fainted. He put a hand to her forehead to see if she caught a fever or something, but nothing. She was breathing okay. Did he shock her with his proclamation? Ryker didn't move from her side. He sat and waited until the sun had set over the horizon. Thinking about all that has happened since the moment he met Mary, and he had never been more confident in his decision. Mary made a soft sound before she started moving around his bed. His gaze shot from the corner of his room to staring at her. She sighed and turned to her side. A second later, her eyes fluttered open. Ryker watched emotion splayed across Mary's face like he was watching a movie. She looked confused for a minute before it turned into pure shock and then horror. Shooting up into a sitting position, she looked at him in horror. It was a dream. It was the first thing she said. "You asked me to be your mate." He nodded. "And I fainted," she said in exasperation. He nodded once again. "I've imagined this a million different ways. Never did I think I would faint in front of my mate." She groaned and covered her face shamefully. Ryker caught the last that his eyes widened, and he moved closer to her. "What did you say?" he asked. "I've imagined this a million after that. Never did I think I would faint in front of my mate." It was her turn to look confused. Ryker broke into a grin first. He captured her lips immediately. Ryker didn't care if she fainted. He cared about her answer. Mary called him her mate. The urge to possess this female was almost frightening to him. He couldn't control the overwhelming power inside of him. The animalistic urge to mark her and possess her body. She fell back onto the mattress and Ryker's body covered her body a moment later. He broke the fevered kiss to skim his lips along her jawline and down the sensitive curve of her neck. She didn't protest. Mary threaded her fingers through his hair, almost locking him into the crook of her neck, urging him to mark her, but Ryker wanted to do so much more. While sucking on her neck to curb the lust and marking her, he removed the covers between them with an abrupt tug, before he quickly discarded their clothes too, leaving no barriers to his hungry exploration. Although Mary has been working on her confidence during her stay here, she never felt more alive than in this moment. Her emotions filled her heart to the peak. So she stopped thinking and allowed her body and heart to revel in Ryker's care. Ryker fell on top of her once again, gentle not to crush her completely. Lightly, he pried her legs apart with his hard knees and settled between them. She felt his hard length pressed against her soft core, throbbing and pulsating with manly needs and her own needs spiked. She wrapped her legs around his waist while he slid his lips back down the curve of her neck and gently bit the area between her neck and shoulder. Without words, he had already told her where he wanted to mark her. She shivered with barely controlled need. She arched her neck in invitation even when he proceeded to suck hard enough to leave a mark. Then Ryker moved lower, sliding down her body until his lips were above her breasts. He brought one nipple into his mouth, sucking and lapping around the sensitive tit until she was writhing with waves of pleasure. When he stopped long enough to pay the same amount of attention to the other nipple, she felt a desperate cry leave her throat. It was pure longing torture. The ache between her legs grew so quickly she cowed and controlled the soft moans and pleas that were leaving her lips. Ryker's hand slid between her legs before circling around her sensitive nub. She cried out loud and clutched the sheets. He watched her fall apart underneath his skilled hands. It plunged inside her and stretched her. "Look at me, Mary," he rasped. She could hear the need in his voice. It strained his vocals when he spoke. Her eyes flew open to look at him while he worked his fingers inside of her, building her quickly to her peak. Her muscles tightened and her eyes were wide. "You're mine, Mary. Mine," she cried out as he stretched her one last time. Her body shook, and she threw head back, her body writhing and moving on its own as wave and wave of the orgasm hits her. Just when she was about to hit the end of her orgasm, he stopped, knelt between her legs, hooked his hand underneath her thighs and plunged his hard length inside of her. Mary gasped upon the invasion, throwing her head back at the sheer pleasure of feeling him inside her. It felt amazing. So good. Even when he wasn't moving. That thought was snuffed a second later when he pulled all the way out and plunged hard and deep inside of her. "Ryker." She screamed his name as her hands clutched the sheets beneath her for dear life. Mary was still looking at him again, almost daring him to try one more time. Ryker's grip on her thighs tightened as he showed her he was more than willing to do it. "Shit," she growled. One corner of his mouth quirked upward before he started a hard and fast rhythm inside of her. Her body shook with each thrust. She felt the coil inside of her tightening all over again, so fast that she wasn't ready. "Ryker." She was desperate this time. Ryker released his grip on her thighs before rolling over onto his back, bringing her on top of him. He knew what she wanted. By putting her on top, she could control the pace. She placed her hand on his chest before rocking her hips. Slow, circled movements that made him groan. Mary watched him close his eyes tight with pleasure and biting his bottom lip. When he opened his eyes again, he was looking at her greedily, her body moving slow and seductive. Her eyes were bright with desire and hunger, while her hair was a tangled mess over her shoulders. She looked like a temptress. His temptress. Mary's rocked harder and faster on top of him, her breasts bouncing with each rock. Ryker's control slipped completely. He was about to burst inside of her like an inexperienced juvenile, flipping her over. He took back the reins. Ryker captured her lips and slipped his arms underneath her shoulders. His body completely covered her. This time, he was going to bring them both to the edge together, and she was ready. Mary kissed him back with equal amount of fever. When he felt her tightened around him, he knew that she was there. Breaking the kiss suddenly, he moved to the crook of her neck, growling like an alpha. His canine led, he felt her tight, and once again around him, he plunged his canines into her skin. He felt her own canines pressed against his shoulder, and the second that he pierced her skin, she also plunged her canines into his shoulder. Blood filled both their mouths, mixing their bonds and tying their souls together. They both could feel the build-up and tugging in their chest and mind. Neither of them were relenting in releasing their canines. A muffled growl vibrated from deep within Ryker's chest as he bore his release inside of her. She was milking him dry each orgasmic wave. When they both came down, Mary was the first to remove her canines, but she made sure to lap at the two little wounds on his shoulders to close them properly. Ryker repeated the same action to his mark on her neck, pulling back onto his elbows. He looked down at Mary. The unspoken words hung in the air between them. They did it. They were finally mated.